Molly and Grandpa's Oak Tree. Written by Gil Pitta. Illustrated by Chris Morrill. Grandpa and Granny Peg lived on the edge of town in a house that had been there forever. In their yard grew the biggest oak tree Millie and Molly had ever seen. "My oak tree is 100 years old," said Grandpa. And Granny Peg said, "We'll soon be 100 years old too." Grandpa and Granny Peg belonged to everyone. Everyone had enjoyed a jar of strawberry jam from Granny Peg's pantry. And everyone's woodshed had been given a load of Grandpa's firewood during hard times. Everyone, especially Millie and Molly, loved Grandpa and Granny Peg. One day, Grandpa woke up after a good night's sleep and still felt sleepy. Millie and Molly were very surprised to find him still in bed on a sunny day. When Granny Peg suggested they fetch Dr. Smiley, they ran as fast as their little legs would take them. "Now there's nothing to worry about," Dr. Smiley comforted Granny Peg. "Grandpa is wearing out. It's time he went a little slower." But when Granny Peg went back to her kitchen, Dr. Smiley kindly said to Grandpa, "You must prepare for Granny Peg's future. You may not see another winter, but she could live to be 100. Grandpa jumped out of bed. Millie, Molly, and Granny Peg knew better than to argue with Grandpa, and besides, they were relieved to see him back to his old self. By the end of the day, Grandpa's woodshed was full of firewood, and Millie and Molly had made a stack of all the small bits for kindling. By the end of the next day, Grandpa had filled the pantry with jam from the strawberries in his yard, and Millie and Molly had labeled all the jars. The day after, all the pumpkins were in tidy rows. While Grandpa stacked the top shelf, Millie and Molly stacked the bottom shelf. And the day after that, Grandpa had bagged all his potatoes and given Millie and Molly each a pocketful of little ones to take home for their dinner. The next day, Millie and Molly found Grandpa sitting under his oak tree with a basket full of acorns. "Look," he said. "Who would believe that this little fellow could grow into a mighty oak tree? Can we plant acorns in our yards?" Millie and Molly asked. "You certainly can," said Grandpa. "Promise me you will water them and look after them, and one day you will have oak trees of your own to sit under." Grandpa had one last chore to do before he hopped into bed. He wrote, "My dear Granny Peg, there are enough pumpkins, potatoes, and firewood to last until you are 100, and there's enough strawberry jam for everybody. Please put me under the oak tree and I will wait for you there. Love, from Grandpa." The next morning, he had gone. One day, a town planner came to visit. "Granny Peg," he said, "the council would like to cut down your tree and move your house to make way for a new highway." "I won't leave Grandpa," said Granny Peg. "He can go too," said the town planner. "Oh no, "He can't," said Granny Peg. "He's waiting for me under the oak tree." Fortunately, the town planner was a tree lover. He agreed Grandpa and his oak tree should not be disturbed. Granny Peg thanked the town planner for being so understanding and gave him a jar of strawberry jam. Grandpa's calculations were perfect. Granny Peg enjoyed her 100th birthday, and before she hopped into bed, she put the last piece of firewood on her fire. The next morning, she too had gone. Granny Peg had only just met Grandpa under the oak tree when the bulldozer moved in. If your highway curves around a very old tree, it may well be Grandpa's oak tree. And if you find an acorn, plant it in your yard. Water it and take care of it, and one day you too will have an oak tree of your own to sit under. Millie, Molly, and Grandpa's oak tree. Grandpa and Granny Peg were almost 100 years old. Like the oak tree in their yard, they were kind to everyone in town. They helped people with firewood and strawberry jam. One day, Grandpa didn't feel well. Dr. Smiley said to him it was time to slow down. Grandpa couldn't leave Granny in need. What could he do for her? The end.